welcome to this Nipoppy tutorial. In this tutorial, we will cover how to use the Nipoppy pipeline subcommands. More concretely, we will explore the Nipoppy pipeline subcommands, learn how to make use of shared containers, and configure installed pipelines. To participate in this tutorial in a hands-on fashion, you will need a Nipoppy dataset created with Nipoppy init. Please check out our previous video on Nipoppy init in case you do not have a Nipoppy dataset yet. Also, we provide an example dataset for all of our tutorials. Please visit the GitHub repo to download the example dataset should you not have done so yet. The Nipoppy toolbox utilizes containers to run most pipelines. Moreover, Nipoppy makes running containers for us even easier by providing descriptive files, default invocation files, as well as basic configs for some popular processing pipelines. The config file specifies how the pipeline is handled within the Nipoppy toolbox. The descriptive files list tool inputs, outputs, error codes, and more. The invocation files specify the runtime parameters. The command Nipoppy pipeline list lets us explore which pipelines we have available in our Nipoppy dataset. We can see that we do not have any pipelines available yet for bitsification, processing, or extraction of IDPs. By running the command Nipoppy pipeline search, we can see the first 10 of the pipelines which are pre-configured by Nipoppy and can be installed from Zenodo through the Nipoppy toolbox. If you want to see all the pipelines available, you can add the -as flag and specify the number of available pipelines, which you can find as info when running the pipeline search command. Before running any command related to pipelines or containers, you should know if your current system has an Apptainer or Singularity installation. Apptainer was formerly known as Singularity. On some institutional systems, there might not be an Apptainer installation, but Singularity instead. In this case, you need to replace Apptainer with Singularity whenever you run a container-related command directly in the terminal, as well as in the global config file for running pipelines with Nipoppy. Since our tutorial on Nipoppy process will show how to run the MRI-QC pipeline on a bits dataset, we choose to install the MRI-QC pipeline in this tutorial. For this, let us first search for the pipeline setup on Zenodo. We run Nipoppy pipeline search to find the respective Zenodo ID, and then run Nipoppy pipeline install, passing this ID to retrieve the MRI-QC pipeline setup. Now, Nipoppy asks us if we also want to install the container. For the sake of this tutorial, we say yes. However, we encourage you to make use of shared containers. Should you work on a shared compute resource with the possibility to access installed containers, you should not install them through Nipoppy, but point to this shared resource in the global config file. Or symlink this resource to your container directory in the Nipoppy dataset and keep the container folder in the Nipoppy dataset as container source. Inside the pipelines directory, we can now find a folder named after the pipeline we've just installed, which contains the aforementioned pipeline setup files. Inside the container directory, we find the container image. Running Nipoppy pipeline list also shows us that the pipeline has been installed. Looking into the global config file, we can see that it was updated with the pipeline variables for the MRI-QC pipeline. There are some placeholders for us to update, which we will explain later in our Nipoppy process tutorial. In general, it is good practice to inspect the global config file after installing a pipeline in order to check if the pipeline expects any additional configurations from us. Let us summarize what we learned in this tutorial. When we initialize a new Nipoppy dataset, we do not yet have any pipelines available. We need to install a pipeline setup from Zenodo. You can search for available setups on Zenodo with the command nipoppy pipeline search and install them by running nipoppy pipeline install and passing the Zenodo ID. We can also choose to install the container at the same time, or symlink a container from a shared resource, or point to the shared resource directly. Once you've installed the pipeline configs, check your global config file if any substitutions of placeholders are needed for this pipeline. Congratulations! You are now ready to run containers with Nipoppy.